Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. Welcome to a Tuesday. I'm going to tell you what, Stymie, I am feeling this. He says, Stymie came in to the chat. Good afternoon on this Monday, day 2. That's basically how I have felt all day today. Like Monday, day 2. This does not feel like Tuesday, an advancement of the week to me.
That's not good.
I don't know how you're doing, Vince.
It feels like a Tuesday to me. I'm not sure that's a good feeling necessarily, but like, my day job is kind of broken up a little bit, and so there's testing tomorrow, so like half the school's not going to be there. So like that's a great day for me. So like I've been looking forward to Wednesday for a while. You know what I mean? So,
I guess at the end of the day, our day is better than Robert Saleh,
because we're still employed.
That's exactly right. And, for like those who maybe didn't see, the New York Jets head coach got the axe today. Not only did he get the axe, Vince, they basically sent the principal into his office, and security escorted Robert Saleh out of the Jets facility.
Is that bad?
Feels like that's a little over the top to me. Like he's like whatever he is as a head coach, like he's never come across as like, you know what I mean? Like he seems like he's got good dude vibes. Whether he's a good coach, he's got good dude vibes to him.
Well, I think maybe the trying to figure out the best analogy here, but it feels like the troops are running the show there. How about that? Is that the best way to put it?
I've definitely seen, plenty of, hey, Aaron Rodgers fired his first head coach.
Right.
Exactly. What's it like for Aaron Rodgers to fire the coach? That kind of like there's no one. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't think that Aaron Rodgers didn't play a huge part in this, right?
And let's be honest. I mean, I'm sorry. And now look, caveat to the entire conversation, not an Aaron Rodgers fan, never have been, never will be.
Vince, a Bears fan. Aaron Rodgers, of course,
not a fan.
Longtime Green Bay Packer. So
for many reasons, I am not an Aaron Rodgers fan. And is he really playing well enough to be calling the shots, Sean? Like, I don't.
Well, I mean, there's all this. So. Oh, you got to get him. You got to make that trade for Devontae Adams. Like Garrett Wilson was supposed to be behind probably Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown. Garrett Wilson was supposed to be the next best thing. And, the fact that Aaron Rodgers was going to be healthy, this was supposed to be this great Jets offense. Haven't seen Wilson's taken a step back, and Rodgers looks every bit of 40 at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Not like he looks like he could be 50 for that matter, the way he's played.
This team is not a wide receiver away from being good. That's the best way I can say it. That's not what is going to win them a bunch of games. One guy is not going to do it. I didn't do it for the Las Vegas Raiders, and it certainly isn't going to do it for the New York Jets. So, there's a whole other slew of issues in New York, one of which is they don't have a head coach right now. So, did they say who the interim is going to be? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers?
I think the defensive coordinator got the job.
Thought maybe he could be a player coach.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him.
Me neither.
Inmates are running the asylum as it is.
There you go. That's a great analogy, because you are not wrong on any stretch of that. So look, him going to New York was a disaster waiting to happen. Obviously, it happened early last year when he got hurt, and it's not going well so far this year. And I don't know. I'm just not impressed. Just not impressed. I'll leave it at that.
I'm not either. And in the meantime, I get it probably doesn't do Robert Saleh any good when the owner invests what they invested to get Aaron Rodgers, and he was supposed to be the savior of the whole thing. And in the meantime, Sam Darnold, who, of course, used to be a New York Jets quarterback playing for Robert Saleh a couple of years ago, 5-0 with the Minnesota Vikings with win number 5 coming against said Jets in London on Saturday. That probably did Robert Saleh no favors either.
So. Yeah, good point. Good point.
Hats off to Sam Darnold, by the way. Like, he looked like he was a guy who was on the scrap heap, and then your boy J.J. McCarthy gets hurt, and here's Sam
I
Darnold.
know.
Career, not just revitalization, like his career has all of a sudden ascended to the point that if he plays the way he's played so far, like the Vikings
I
feel
know.
either have a really good trade chip. I don't know what his contract is, either a good trade chip in the offseason, or they've got a decision to make. Like, do we really want JJ McCarthy that much after investing a first?
I mean, look, Sam Darnold is a I didn't think he was a very good quarterback in college, and then he kind of proved it in the pros, but then again, he was on the Jets.
He was with the Jets. That's right.
And now all of a sudden he's just a world beater in Minnesota. And it's like, I think you got to go with the proven commodity, right? I mean, you can keep JJ McCarthy on the back burner. He's a rookie. He's going to be on a rookie deal. Keep him back there and let him learn. At this point, that's what I would do. Let him learn behind this guy until one's better than the other. I don't think JJ McCarthy's better right now. What has JJ McCarthy ever done to prove that he's better than Sam Darnold with the way he's playing?
Well, he won a national championship in college, but that was in college, and now
big difference.
Now he's in. No, I know, but I'm saying, like, what has he ever done? I mean, he won a national championship.
Yeah.
Still more than Darnold did. But
yeah, it was.
We'll forget about that. You want to talk some Notre Dame football?
I mean, if we have to,
I'm sure our friends who came into the show were expecting some Notre Dame football talk, and not.
Well, Decaf wants to talk high school football. I could do that all day too, but
yeah,
we won't go down that road.
Well, Elkhart went over Penn.
They did. They won 7-3, and for those keeping track, only one person scored for Penn, and it was 3 points. Just saying.
Is he related to you by any chance?
He might be. He might be. Now, he did miss a field goal as well, but they still lose 7-6, even if he hit it. So, because they were never a threat to score the rest of the game. So it was one of the worst football games I've ever watched, Sean. Two offenses that didn't have a freaking clue what they were doing, which made two defenses look really good. So that's where I'll leave that. Elkhart thinks they have this world-beating defense, which it's not really the case.
See, this is what happens, Decaf. You got him wound up. You got him started.
Man, just saying. I'm just watching with my own eyes. Wasn't good, but look, Elkhart stopped Penn twice. First and goal. I mean, a first and goal opportunity forced them to have two field goal opportunities, and one was made, one was missed. So they stopped them when they had to, and they scored a touchdown when they were put in position with a turnover. They got, they made the play when they had to. So Elkhart played better. I'm not saying they didn't, but I don't think their defense is that good. Look. Bottom line, here's what's going to happen, folks, and then I'll stop talking about high school football. Neither Penn nor Elkhart is going to win their sectional, so it doesn't even matter.
All right. Vince just solved it, and that'll be starting here in a couple of weeks?
A few weeks, This is week 8, I believe.
Yep.
So week 11 is the first week of playoffs.
Beautiful day today. Like, it's fall out there today in
nice.
South Bend. I know.
It is so nice. Sun is shining. There's a little breeze in the air. Like, it's pullover weather, it was fantastic today. It was great.
Absolutely. I haven't looked at the forecast to see what it's going to be. I think the last I saw was like partly sunny or something like that for Sunday's game out there at Notre Dame Stadium when Stanford rolls in.
Nice.
And this is kind of like good to get, we're all getting back in the swing now, gearing back up for a game week after the first bye week of the season. And now we've got this 3-game stretch that's coming up: Stanford, Georgia Tech, and Navy.
It's a nice little stretch here.
Yeah. And then you get another bye, and then you go into that final month of the season in November. So big picture coming out of this bye and going into this 3-game stretch, like, what do you need to see from the Irish?
Well, I think this game, first of all, obviously it's a home game. I think the weather's going to be nice. I think that, Stanford's better this year than they were last year, but they've still got plenty of holes. And, let me ask you this. Is the Stanford quarterback, the Daniels kid, is he definitely playing against Notre Dame, or is it still kind of a...
The last I heard, it's still up in the air.
Okay. All right. If he plays... And I said this in my breakdown of the game, my prediction, but more or less, if he plays, at least the offense has a chance to be balanced. They can throw, they can run, whatever. If the other kid plays, he can't throw the ball at all. So, it's ugly, right? So,
well, the thing with Daniels is, like you talk about Riley Leonard and his running, and like Daniels is leading Stanford in rushing right now.
Yeah, and he's a good runner, but he can throw the ball. Like, at least has the ability to throw the ball. The other kid can't throw really at all. And so that makes their offense one-dimensional. And if you're going to have a one-dimensional offense against Notre Dame's defense, that's just – it's not going to be good, obviously.
Does not shape up for a good – like the other kid, Lamson, like I think he wants to run. He's got a few carries. Like their offensive line is not good, for one thing. I mean, that's part of the reason that they can't run the ball. But they've been sacked, those two. And again, you're talking about a dual threat guy with Daniels. He's been sacked 7 times, and Lamson has been sacked 8 times so far. And he's got
a lot of sacks.
Lamson's the backup quarterback, 41 rushing yards on 37 carries. So, like, he's tried, to use his legs to whatever extent, but it just hasn't produced anything, basically.
Yeah, what I need to see, going back to the original question, look, Notre Dame's defense.
Oh, that's right. There was a question.
Yeah, there was a question in there. Notre Dame's defense is fine. Like, I'm not worried about Notre Dame's defense against Stanford's offense, no matter who the quarterback is. But if the starter's not playing, I have even less worry about Stanford's offense. So Stanford's defense right now, they haven't played, a significant offense up to this point, but they're 12th in the nation in run defense. Okay. And I think we would all agree that Notre Dame's run offense is the strength of their offense. They're 122nd in pass defense. So to me, I feel like this is a great opportunity, number one, to prove your dominance in the run game. I mean, that's what Notre Dame always wants to do. But this is also an opportunity to do something in the pass game that is fairly significant. I mean, you're going up against a terrible pass defense, 122nd in the country. You should be able to have success against this pass defense, against this Stanford pass defense. So I want to see some significant, not baby steps. I do want to see a significant jump in the passing offense for Notre Dame. I think this is a great opportunity to do that, especially going into the Georgia Tech game and then again to the Navy game. Like, this nice 3-game stretch here is a great opportunity to kind of shore up a few things. They've obviously doubled down on who they want on the offensive line. Didn't make any changes during the bye week, according to the depth chart, right? So I'm excited to see what this offense can do from a more balanced attack, but specifically in the passing game. That's what I want to see.
I'm just thinking on that. I'm not going to follow that up with anything but this. Andre says, I need to see 2 things from this team for the rest of the year. 1, effort, 2, attitude. Now, honestly, like when I first saw this comment, I thought that he was talking about this show. Like, he needed effort and attitude from this show, because that was basically the charge that I gave Vince. I said, bring it on this show.
I'm trying.
Or I'm going to give you the Robert Saleh treatment before things are all – no, I didn't really say that. Wow. But I could have been thinking it. Stymie says, big 3-week stretch here. I'd love to see the offense set the tone this week and consistently move the chains. And that's kind of, like in between, like what you were talking about. I do think that this sets itself up just the way, like the timing of this break probably couldn't have come at a better time, because like when you look at the injuries, and Riley Leonard was obviously getting banged up, regardless of what he wanted to let on and all those different kind of things. And I think it kind of gives, obviously with the injuries mounting on the defensive side of the ball, specifically the defensive line, like I think you needed a little bit of extra time. Josh Burnham coming back, I think, can give him something there. What I need to see from the offense is pretty much what you're talking about. I would just like to see now a continuation coming off what we saw in parts of that Louisville game, where the passing game was coming to life and where the offensive line, while still not great, was at least better. This stretch of games right here gives them a chance, and really not just a chance. It it presents an opportunity for both of those things, the passing game and the offensive line, and what part the offensive line plays in it, to just continue to get better. Because that's what we've said for the last few weeks, Vince, especially with the passing game, is just incrementally it needed to continue to improve. The offensive line was better against Louisville. Again, there were still some issues, some things that could be better, but none of these defenses, especially the front, not that Louisville had, like this electric, great defense, but none of them are going to be as good as Louisville's. And I don't think athletically that any of these three teams are going to be as good as Louisville. So I think we just need to kind of see a team that not just in flashes, but from start to finish needs to look like a team that is now ascending.
Absolutely.
I think that's what I'm looking for.
Well, and look, more eyes, not that there's not eyes on Notre Dame all the time, but there are more eyes on Notre Dame now because, look, they're 11th in the country now. They're knocking on the door of the top 10. If they continue to win, obviously they're going to continue to rise. There's some big games this weekend that could have, college football playoff implications and allow Notre Dame to continue to rise. And so, look, right now they're in the college football playoff. Like if the season ended right now, they're in. And now people are starting to pay more attention, right? I mean, that just comes with the territory. And so you need to start putting together some games where people are like, yeah, that's a college football playoff team. You know what I mean? Like that's your charge now.
Exactly. Like, you can't just be winning games by happenstance. You need to actually be showing that you're winning these games.
Like you were crawling back in, to relevance basically over the last few weeks after Northern Illinois. That's what you were doing. People had forgotten about Notre Dame. National people had forgotten about Notre Dame for the most part. So they're climbing their way back in, and now they're back, right? And so they need to continue, but they do need to look. All they need to do is win, obviously. But if we are to think that they are going to make any noise whatsoever in a playoff scenario, whether they're hosting or otherwise, they need to keep climbing and keep getting better and keep turning into that college football playoff type of team. Like, as of now, the way they've played, they're in. Okay? So that obviously it's good enough to get in. But let's be realistic. We all need to see more. We need to see more. And this 3-game stretch, I think, is a great opportunity to see more. When you look at the competition, you look at where things are being played, all of the scenarios for these next 3 games. I really like the way that it lays out for Notre Dame. Obviously, look, they're going to be at home. Then they're going to be, it's essentially a home game for Georgia Tech because it's still in Atlanta. And then, you get to go to New Jersey to play Navy, who's, by the way, still undefeated. You've got a chance to make some noise here. And I think if they can make it, obviously, to the next bye week, then take another chance to get everybody healed up. And then you got that home stretch of the 4-game, the 4-game set there. So this is a big 3-game series as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of like baseball. Like I feel like this 3-game series is really important.
Oh yeah,
for Notre Dame.
Good analogy since it's playoff time.
Yeah, that's right.
Right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Kind of a little, and it's not just you're not just looking to take 2 out of 3. You're obviously looking for the sweep.
Yeah, that's where the baseball analogy ends because, of course, that's if you're baseball, you're like 2 out of 3. No, it's great. It's got to win the series. No, you got to sweep the series at this point, obviously. So, yeah, this is really, really important. But you can still see that bye in the future, and like, hey, we just need to get to the bye. Let's get healthy again, and then you've got the home stretch.
Well, it was interesting because Marcus Freeman, in his opening statement at the press conference yesterday, mentioned the fact that Stanford came in here 2 years ago and beat Notre Dame. And then he mentioned that, and I'd kind of forgotten about this because the game turned into such a blowout, but he said second quarter last year out at Stanford that they were actually winning.
I forgot that too.
At one point. And, Jeff brings this up. He says, hate to bring this up, but it's Notre Dame. So your confidence level that we don't see a repeat of the last home game against Stanford. How much do you think that Marcus Freeman leans into, hey, last time they were here, we were supposed to beat them and they beat us. And it was a close game early out there last year before we went. Like especially the what Stanford did 2 years ago here at Notre Dame Stadium. Like, do you think he leans into that quite a bit as a motivating weapon this week?
I think he leaned into it last year, and it got him what he needed. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary to lean into it this year. I think Tanner McKee was a better quarterback 2 years ago than anybody they're going to put behind center this year for Stanford.
True story.
And I also think that Riley Leonard's better than Drew Pine. That right there, I don't think that Notre Dame is going to have a repeat of 2 years ago. And even at that point, they only won by 2 points. So I just don't see history repeating itself in that regard. I just don't know that you can go to the well from a 2 year ago. You could bring it up like, hey, last time we played these guys at home, they came to bring it, and they were a terrible football team and they beat you. I would more remind them about what they did last year to this team. Like, hey, remember last year when we whooped them? Like, that's what needs to happen at home this year. Like, if I'm bringing up old games, that's the game I'm bringing up, not necessarily the loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because the unfortunate part of this whole thing is we're still looking for that level of consistency from this team, and that's why this game is so big. And the fact that it did just happen 2 years ago, and oh, by the way, it didn't just happen 2 years ago, but you also have something very similar in the fact that they lost to Marshall 2 years ago, and then they, lost to Stanford. Those were both home games. They lost to Northern Illinois this year. They've got Stanford coming up. It feels a little bit like we're living in a Groundhog Day, type situation, because that's, I mean, that definitely, it's still a thing that Marcus Freeman has to figure out the right buttons to push. So, like John B is saying, Marcus Freeman has to play on the pride aspect for sure. Don't let him mess things up again. They had a letdown versus Northern Illinois, no room for another. I mean, agree with all that. Like, he's still sort of figuring out what buttons he has to put, and like people were saying, I saw in the Champions Lounge yesterday, I don't think it came up during the show, but like Marcus Freeman, like he kind of had that, like, I'm not here to mess around kind of look on his face. Like, he was not a very happy guy during the press conference yesterday, it felt like,
Good. He shouldn't be.
No, you're exactly right. Like, if he needs to be a little bit uncomfortable because it's not like he got, like he was getting pressed on anything major during the press conference yesterday. So I don't think, not like it was a response to, to questions being asked or any of those kind of things, but it just feels like he does have to figure out what buttons to push. And it feels like, like you said, does he think about 2 years ago? I don't know. Like, do you lean into the negative stuff? I don't know, but
I bring it up.
He's got to figure out what the message needs to be to get these guys motivated. Like, there was a different kind of urgency. There was a different kind of fire against Louisville a couple of weeks ago.
But that was a big game.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my point. You shouldn't have to lean on, like, if you're an elite program, or even a program that is bordering on elite, like, you shouldn't have to use that as motivation. Like, you should just be better and you should come out with fire every week. But Marcus Freeman's got to figure out how to bring that fire out of him week in and week out.
No, that completely agree. And that's the biggest knock on Marcus Freeman right now, right? Is that from week to week, it's a different team. From week to week, it's a different team, and you never know which team you're going to get. The problem is, for big games, you usually get a good team. And for not good big games, you usually don't. That's the problem. And that's what he needs to fix. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You're the head coach. You need to fix it. That's what needs to happen, period. So, I mean, look, Louisville basically went the way we all kind of thought that it would go, right? I mean, Notre Dame controlled that game.
With the exception of fumbling the opening kickoff and those kind of things.
I mean, yeah.
Like, maybe from a score standpoint, yeah.
Overall, like, the game was never in doubt. And
I guess that's the thing that, like Trevor and I were talking yesterday about what needs to improve, and Freeman talked about it as well. Like, the mental errors, like the focus type stuff. And to me, turnovers, focus is part of
not carrying the ball correctly is a focus
That's exactly
problem.
right. That's exactly right.
That's a focus problem.
Like they've put the ball on the ground 6 times. They've lost 4 of them. I think that ranks something like 93rd in the nation or something like that. That needs to improve dramatically. I mean, if there's one sure way to keep an inferior team in the game, it's letting them have the ball, like just like muffing a punt against Miami, Ohio, those kind of things.
Absolutely.
So
Can't do it.
Yeah. We need to start, again, we need to see a more mentally honed in team.
Yes.
And maybe this break gives them a chance at some kind of reset. You got a ghost in the background there? Is that like you're on mute?
I know who it was. I just don't know why.
Okay.
That I don't know what is going on upstairs, but it's crazy Tuesday apparently.
Let's hear some of Marcus Freeman's thoughts on this Stanford defense that Vince was alluding to a little bit.
Well, I think I have a lot of respect for him as a offensive play caller. As you look back at last year when we played them, we knew they were a unique offense in terms of what they did. You'll see a lot of stress put on a defense based off motions and shifts and formations, and they did some unique things in last year's game where they gave us extra wide splits, and so I think he's a creative offensive mind. But they utilize different personnels. They have some injuries, so we're not 100% sure what we'll see. They probably were a majority 11 personnel team as you go into the first couple games of the year, but they've had some injuries. And so, will we see more 12? Will we see 13? Not 100% sure, but he's a creative play caller that will put a lot of stress on a defense.
And I haven't been able to find anything new on Ashton Daniels, no reports or anything like that on what his health is, the quarterback we were talking about before. But, again, he is a dual threat guy.
Yep.
59% passer, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Again, he's their team's leading rusher with 250 yards. And you look at Lamson, their backup, who started against Virginia Tech, 54%. 37 yards on 41 carries. Again, like they have been sacked a total of 15 times so far between the two of them. And like the fact that Daniels has been sacked as much as he has for a guy with the running ability that he has, the fact that he's been sacked 7 times, I think that speaks a lot to the state of their line and kind of where they are. And the fact that there's just not a whole lot, it seems like, going on in the running game. But it also, if he's able to go, how close to 100% he is will have some impact. But at the same, like if he is even 80%, for a guy who can take off like that, I mean, this is really the first dual threat potential that this Notre Dame defense has faced this season, and that brings a whole different element altogether, Vince.
Oh yeah, he is your best bet to compete and win at Notre Dame Stadium on Saturday. If he's even close to good enough to go, he's the one that has to go. I mean, that's just the bottom line if you're Stanford, because if you start the other kid, I don't think you have much of a shot. And so he gives you the best opportunity to win. You've got to play this kid if he's at all ready to go. Again, like I said, yes, he's their leading rusher, so he can do damage with his legs, but he can also, do some damage with his arm. It at least makes them a competent passing offense. And again, they're going up against Notre Dame's defense, which I think we can all agree is really good. And they're really good in the pass game. So they're going to probably shut down whatever pass game, whoever it happens to be. And so they're going to have to be good in the run game. And a way to be better in the run game is to get your quarterback involved. So that's what they're going to try to do if he's at all healthy to do it.
I want to go back to some of the things that we were talking about just a second ago with Marcus Freeman and kind of cleaning the things up. Andre wants to know from you how you fix it.
Honestly, it's not an easy answer. That's the thing. And it's not a thing that you can just flip a switch on. That's the problem that we were all discussing after the Northern Illinois game, is that you need to practice and you need to prepare, for each game the correct way, whatever that happens to be. You can't go into it in a complacent manner that this team isn't all that good and that you're going to do this, that, and the other. Like, you have to prepare. I mean, it sounds cliche, but you got to prepare like Lou Holtz always prepared these guys, that practice is the hardest thing, and then you get into the game and you're ready to rock and roll. You know what I mean? And people used to make fun of Lou Holtz because he would always talk up Navy or he would talk up these inferior opponents. It's kind of what you got to do. You've got to practice like you're playing in the Super Bowl every single week. And it has to be consistent every single time. You can't have the ebbs and the flows in that. And that's a culture thing. That's a year-long thing. That's not a, well, crap, we lost to Northern Illinois. Now we need to change everything that we're doing. Like, you can't really do that in the middle of the season. It's a whole thing, right? So yes, there's some interim things that he can do in the meantime, but there's also some things that he needs to lean into in the offseason and kind of reshape the way they do things. And it's not an overnight thing. That's the problem.
And that's the fact that we don't get to see, like, especially once the season starts, what it looks like for them out there on the practice field. Like, that's where, like you said, it's like practice needs to be the hardest part, but that's also where you set the standard, whether it's fumbles or, like any of these other things,
Right.
that the mental mistakes, putting them
right.
in the situations, like one of the things that's always seemed to sound pretty good for Marcus Freeman is he's talked about, he likes competition and
yeah,
they've had a lot of competitive periods of practice in those kind of things. And you would think that would, kind of take care of some of these things, but that's not what we've seen so far this year. It's pretty much been, again, throw out, I realize you can't, but you throw out the turnovers against Louisville, like the fumble of the opening kickoff and the Jadarian Price fumble. I mean, otherwise it was a really good game from just in terms of the intensity they brought, all those different things, very similar to Texas A&M. But you're at the point now where, again, you can't just get up for the ranked teams.
Right, exactly.
It's got to be there every day, and he's got to figure out, again, how to push the right buttons and make that happen. And you're absolutely right. It starts on the practice field with what they're emphasizing, Monday through Friday on the practice field.
Well, and to be honest with you, it shouldn't be very hard to get these kids motivated for every single game here the rest of the way, because if you want to have an opportunity to play for a national championship, and by that I mean get into the college football playoff, you got to win out. Like, that's it. And if you lay another egg, if you lose another game, you're out. But and even if you do get in at 10-2, you're obviously going to be at the very bottom, and you're going to have a heck of a time getting to where you want to be, right? So you've got to win out. That's motivation enough. Like, guys, what do you want your season to be like? What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want it to be the team that lost to Northern Illinois and another team and missed out? Is that what you want? We can go to some crappy bowl game and, you can get your free PlayStation and get the heck out of here. Is that what you want? Or do you want to have an opportunity to play for a championship? That's got to be the message. And that's the same message every single game for the end of the year. What do you want? What do you want your legacy to be? This is your team. This isn't my team. Like, look, guys, at the end of the day, I'll be back next year. Like, that's what I used to tell some of my kids. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back next year.
Maybe.
Well, yes, unless they lose all their games. But Marcus Freeman's going to be back next year, regardless of what people want. So be like, look, this is your team, right? This isn't the coach's team. This is your team. What do you want? We will give you the opportunity. We will give you the tools to be successful. It's what do you guys want? At the end of the day, it's the players making the plays.
Let's talk a little bit about the Stanford defense, because their run defense ranks 12th in the nation, second in the ACC. They're allowing 88.2 yards a game. They've won 2 games. In those wins, they're allowing just over 36 yards per game, 182 total yards that they have allowed through 5 games. Now, their wins are over Cal Poly and Syracuse. Their losses are to TCU, Clemson, and Virginia Tech by a combined score of 105 to 48. They're allowing 270 passing yards per game. So, like, are you concerned about Stanford's defense as a legit threat to shut down Notre Dame's run game?
The short answer is no. I am not concerned about Stanford's defense shutting down Notre Dame's run game.
Had a feeling.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, Virginia Tech had some success. Clemson had some success. I feel like they haven't faced a balanced offense like Notre Dame presents yet this year. Now, Clemson is obviously the best team that they've played so far, and they lost 40-14. If Notre Dame struggles against this defense, it's because Notre Dame didn't play well. Like that, honestly, that's how I feel about this entire thing, because Notre Dame, again, I said it before, Notre Dame's running offense is their calling card. That is what they're best at, right? And they haven't seen a quarterback like Riley Leonard run the football, okay? They also haven't seen any, obviously, they've had people throw the ball on them pretty consistently. So, again, this is going to be an opportunity for Notre Dame to do that. But they're going to establish the run. I mean, that is what's going to happen. And so I do think that is what is going to happen. They'll probably get Riley Leonard involved early in the run game. I don't really want them to use him a ton. I think they can do some things without him. But I also don't want this be a game where they just go into this thing thinking, well, Riley, I just want you to stay in the pocket. And I don't like those
that's
kinds
the
of
last
things.
thing I want.
I don't want that either.
Especially at the start of the game, like when they come out of the gates in every game, regardless of who the opponent is, they just need to run their offense that he's a part of. And that means Riley Leonard is a threat to run the ball, because especially when you have him as a legit threat to run, whether it's zone read or, whatever, like him and Jeremiah Love and or Jadarian Price, like that's how your offense gets going.
Right.
But there's obviously still plenty to build off in terms of the passing game as well. Like, like you said, I don't want to see Riley Leonard as all of a sudden a pocket quarterback again, like they kind of tried to do against Northern Illinois.
Exactly.
That's just not the way to go. Because like you talked about that Clemson game, and that's obviously the best team that they've faced so far. Cade Klubnik, who is still like to me, the jury is still out as to just how good Cade Klubnik is and just how good the Clemson offense is, even though it's been a lot better, since the Georgia game. But Klubnik threw for over 250 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Clemson also ran for 150 yards. Like that is both of those numbers right there, even though Riley Leonard is yet to hit 200 passing yards. But like all of that to me is very attainable against the Stanford defense this weekend.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. So, I mean, look, Stanford's defense is one-dimensional at this point. According to the stats, they can stop the run, but they can't stop the passing game. But they haven't faced a running attack like Notre Dame either. Like that is also part of it, right? So they are going to establish the run first, and the pass game will come off of that.
Ray's asking you how Notre Dame's offense is balanced. Are they better balanced than Clemson?
They're probably not better balanced than Clemson, but at the same time, I'd have to really look into Clemson's numbers. I haven't really done that, to be perfectly honest with you, because Notre Dame doesn't play Clemson. I don't care. So,
and I mean, outside of Georgia, Clemson has played App State, who's not good this year, NC State, who we thought was going to be good, but is not good this year, Stanford, not good this year, and Florida State, who we thought was going to be good
this year,
but is not good this year. So, like, again, like if you look at pure numbers, Klubnik has thrown for over 1,200 yards so far this season, and Clemson has like Maffa has rushed for almost 500 yards. Klubnik is running the ball a little bit, and Jay Haynes has a little over 100 yards. They're averaging 6.1 per carry, and for the most part, Klubnik's not turning the ball over. But again, it's like it's largely a Power 4 schedule that they've played against. But outside of Georgia, it's like you would expect that they should be putting those numbers up. Now, it's completely fair to say, well, so shouldn't Riley Leonard be putting the numbers up as well? Yeah, it's completely fair to say that. But again, like when you look at the full picture with Riley Leonard. It obviously goes beyond just throwing the ball and passing the ball. We all want to see a better and more consistent passing game, So
Sure.
like if you look at true balance, yeah, I would say Clemson has more true balance than Notre Dame.
And that's fine.
Right now. Yeah.
I get it. I mean, look, Notre Dame's rushed for a shade over 1,000 yards, 1070, and they've thrown for 858. So obviously they run the ball better than they throw the ball. Okay, got it. It's pretty close to balanced. I mean, it's not, I don't know. But they also run the ball more than they throw it. They've thrown the ball 173 times, and they've thrown the ball 140 times. So they average 6.2 yards a rush, and they average 6.1 yards a pass.
And look, Ray is talking about they're ranked 115 in passing offense. I mean, don't make me say it. Don't make me say it. Okay. Stats are for losers. Okay. I don't want to have to say that because look, Notre Dame at this point is never going to be a top 25 passing offense. And that's not the question. Where they rank in passing offense is completely irrelevant. The bigger question right now is, do they continue to get better? But also, not only do they continue to get better, but do they can Riley Leonard make throws when he has to make throws? Can Mike Denbrock scheme it up when he needs to scheme it up to help that's the biggest thing. And it's more to me about eyeball test, what this offense looks like when you're watching it. Does it look like an offense that can go win games against a good opponent, once December rolls around? As of right now, that is still a big question, but I think that they can continue to play themselves into that as that comfort between Denbrock and Riley Leonard. We've seen at least the complexion of the offense start to change over the last few weeks as they've weeded some things out.
Agreed.
It's starting to look different. I'm not going to say it's far from a finished product though right now.
Agreed.
Steven says Notre Dame has the 46th ranked offense. That isn't good, but isn't fair to judge Riley pure by passing. Yeah, that's exactly right, because he's also on pace to be just shy of 1,000 rushing yards right now. That's a big factor as well. Again, it's more about, can he hit the passing plays when they need to hit a passing plays? Can he keep the chains moving when he needs to keep the chains moving? They showed when they needed a touchdown last week, they were able to hit a couple of plays that are not last week, 2 weeks ago, obviously. The pass to Jaden Harrison, and obviously, Jeremiah Love did most of the work, but again, well schemed up by Mike Denbrock to put him in that situation to get it done.
And stats are for losers, and Notre Dame is actually the 74th ranked offense.
Yeah. Again, I don't care what the stat rankings are at this point.
So it's
they're not going to move the needle as an elite passing.
No,
offense.
They're not.
The only question is, do they win games or not?
Exactly.
Honestly.
And that's all that matters to anybody at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You can be the highest ranked offense in the country, which is Miami of Florida, by the way. And, they've looked pretty vulnerable at times too, right? And Ole Miss is number 2, Boise State is number 3, Pittsburgh is number 4 in total offense. How many of those teams are going to make it into the college football playoff? That's the question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what happens.
Andre wanted to know Klubnik's numbers against Georgia. I will tell you, Andre, he was 18 of 29 for 142 yards. That's 62%. And he also ran for negative 17 yards. He was only sacked twice, but he ran for negative 17 yards. Whereas against Florida State, he ran 11 times for 62 yards, 7 carries for 48 against Stanford, 4 carries for 70 yards against North Carolina State. So he's done some running, Klubnik has, over the last 3 games, but he just did next to nothing. I mean, that's what the entire offense did, next to nothing in that opener against Georgia. So
Not great.
No. Well, Vince, this feels like it's, leading into another conversation. So let's take it with this. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go. Rapid fire time. First time of the week for me. It's just weird saying that on a Tuesday.
That's very true. That is very true. That's why it's Monday, day 2, I guess, just like Stymie said earlier. Fill in the blank. You feel blank about Notre Dame's college football playoff chances right now.
I feel positive about it. I'm not exactly going to go out and bet the mortgage payment or anything like that, because who knows what's going to happen over the next, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. But I feel good about it. I mean, look, they didn't even play this last Saturday, and all of a sudden they're in the college football playoff. You know what I mean? So, and there's a bunch of big games this weekend too, which will have implications against Notre Dame as long as they continue to win. So, we said this even back when they lost to Northern Illinois. If they win the rest of their games, now, obviously the margin is razor thin now, but if they win the rest of their games, they're going to get in. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, I would not have predicted Notre Dame to be the number 11 team in the country on October 8th after losing to Northern Illinois last month. I would not have done that. But because of the parity around them and the losses that happened, last Saturday, I feel positive about it. And again, it's what we told you guys was going to happen. If Notre Dame continues to win, they're going to keep climbing up and they're going to end up where they want to be. It's just they cannot lose. The like I said, the margin for error is razor thin. So I feel good about it, but I want to stay, like as Jeff would say, cautiously optimistic. I like
Yeah. I mean, optimistic is my key word. Like when you look right now, they're already the number of unbeaten teams is dwindling pretty fast. And typically by early October, you have a few more. I think conference expansion has played a big part in that, but you got Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, all sitting up there unbeaten right now. Either Ohio State or Oregon is going to lose a game this weekend because they're obviously playing against each other. Miami's sitting there at number 6. What happens there? Iowa State is unbeaten, tied with Notre Dame at number 11 right now. BYU is unbeaten at 5-0. And then you got crazy Indiana at 6-0 as well. Yeah. So my point is, Notre Dame just needs to keep winning, and I think they'll be in pretty good shape. Now, are they going to keep winning? That's the key question, because they have shown that they can trip themselves up, and they obviously can't do that again, just like we've talked about. And I agree with what Jeff Brown is saying. He says, unless we have more Saturdays like this last one, they're not getting in at 10-2. And I completely agree with that. I don't see a 10-2 Notre Dame getting in, because there's just not a good enough win the rest of the way. Who knows if USC is even going to be a 500 team by the time Notre Dame goes to Los Angeles.
That's fair.
At the end of November.
Although, spoiler alert, I think they win this week.
Okay.
Just saying. Penn State's already making excuses about the flight. So that's never a good sign.
Wow. USC has already had to come to who would have thought that I'd be a a USC defender, but USC's already had to come to the Midwest twice to play Minnesota and Michigan. And now Penn State's complaining about that flight.
Oh yeah. Well, we got to leave on Thursday because we can't leave, and they got to do a 2-hour drive to get to an airport that's big enough. Well, that's your fault for not building a big enough airport near your school, number one. And number two,
well, that's you would think with a major university like that, why haven't they built so that they can charter better in and out of there?
So they got to travel 2 hours to the airport. Then it's a 5.5-hour flight. So they're leaving on Thursday. It's man, where have I heard these excuses before the game's even played before? I feel like I've heard that somewhere. I just can't remember where it was. Anyway, I just think they're going in there with the wrong mindset, and USC is just waiting on the beach for them to get there, and it could be ugly for the old Penn Staters.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, yeah, I feel pretty optimistic about Notre Dame. If they win out, I feel like the fact that they're sitting at number 11, how much that matters when you do have the playoff committee and all that stuff.
Sure.
But I don't think they're going to be that far off from where they are. But again, like Notre Dame still needs to start looking more the part of a playoff team, and
agreed.
not just accidentally winning games. They
Agreed.
they need to take care of their business and start looking like a team that belongs in the playoff.
Well, there's 5 SEC teams ahead of them right now, 2 Big Ten teams, and 2 ACC teams that are ahead of Notre Dame right now.
Yeah.
And then there's a Big 12 team that's tied with them. So they're going to have to leapfrog some of those teams to be where they want to be.
But again, those teams are going to be playing each other for the most part. Even though, like, I don't think Clemson and Miami play each other this year, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check the schedule. No, they don't. Like, Clemson and Miami would not play until potentially the ACC championship game, assuming they both take care of business and get there.
You guys are right. I forgot Oregon's part of the Big Ten. My bad, fellas. You got me. You're right. 3 Big Ten.
I mean, it's easy to forget. It's the first time we've gone through this.
I still can't get on that one. That's my bad, guys. My bad. Oregon, Big Ten.
Yeah. This is a good point from Jeremy, because I've heard, like, people already talking about all this like regardless of sport, Notre Dame has been doing this for a long time, whether it's like Big East schedules or ACC schedules or wherever, or, like the season a few years back when Notre Dame went to New York City to play against Syracuse out there at Yankee Stadium. Then they went to San Diego to play Navy. Then they came back. They had a home game, I think. And then they were in Chicago to play Northwestern. And then they were back out to the West Coast to play USC. I mean, they were bebopping and scatting all over the country. It happens all the time. There's a lot of miles.
It just cracks me up, Sean, that they're complaining about travel, but they weren't complaining when they were cashing the check.
No,
being in these conferences.
And that's the thing. And that's why I have no sympathy from any of them, because you're starting to hear a lot of that going on, like, oh, the travel and, all these like time zones and all this different stuff. Well,
this is the bed you made.
You're cashing the check, right? Yeah. Like that's the reason you did this. Now you got to live with it. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So speaking of the playoff, someone in the Champions Lounge the other day had an interesting post, I think, about, back to the possibility that Notre Dame would host a college football playoff game. And what he said was he read that the hosts of the first round of the playoffs are not in control of the stadium. The college football playoff is in control. They allocate the tickets and make most of the money. He says, as an example, if Notre Dame hosts, students will not sit in the student section. Notre Dame will not get the majority of the tickets. Notre Dame's allotment would be somewhere around 15,000, just like the opposing team, and the remainder of the tickets are allocated to conferences. Some will be sold in either a lottery, open market, first come, first serve. He says, yes, the game will be played on a team's home field, but it will not be like a home game. Like, do you see this detrimental in any way? Like, should this matter at all if you actually get to host a team in the first round of the college football playoff? Does this move the needle in a negative fashion for you, Vince?
So I am going to lean on my experience as a high school coach here. When you host a game in high school in the playoff, it is supposed to be as neutral of an environment as you can possibly make it. So, like, for example, I had to supervise the soccer sectional last night. They had to cut down all of the senior banners. They had to cut down all the sponsor banners. You couldn't play music.
Right.
There's no noisemakers. There's no signs. It's as neutral as you can possibly make it. Guess what? There's still a home field advantage. So, yes, they will eliminate a lot of those things, and I get that. But they're still coming up to whoever it is, if Notre Dame is hosting, right? It's most likely going to be a team from the South coming up to Notre Dame in December. College football playoff has no control over the weather. They have no control over that kind of stuff. And I still feel like the majority of the fans will still be Notre Dame fans. So, yes, it will have a different, if all of that is correct, if everything
season ticket holders are still going to have a priority to get, even though they won't be necessarily part of that allotment, there will be opportunities for season ticket holders, to purchase tickets, and all those different kind of things. Yeah. So, I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, they will strip some of that out of the way, and I get all of that, but you're still playing in your own stadium. You're
Right.
still in your own
You
locker
still get to
room.
be at home.
Still in your
Yeah.
own bed. That stuff is
You
real.
don't have to travel, which
Right.
everyone's complaining.
Right.
We just got done
Right.
talking about it.
Right.
Everyone's complaining about travel. You don't have to
Yes.
travel. You sleep in your own bed, or at
Oh.
least in the hotel that you're used to sleeping at the night
Yes.
before, and all that different stuff.
100%. And USMA says the finals are on 12/19. Aren't the games on the 20th and the 21st?
Yeah,
I believe they are. Guaranteed Notre Dame keeps the dorms open for a couple of days.
They are. That's I was
Yeah.
waiting for you to kind of get through
Okay.
your
Sorry, go
part,
ahead.
and they are. They're
Hit
going to
it.
keep the dorms open,
Yeah.
like so that students can stay.
Right.
Obviously, if it gets to that, like they would keep the dorms open so that the students can be here, and there will still be a student section. It might not look exactly like it looks like, like I said this, in the thread, like look at the Final Four as an example. Like that's an NCAA run event. It's at a neutral site, right? But they still have a dedicated student section for the students of the teams, to sit together. There's still going to be a student section. There's still going to be a band. And I talked about this in that thread. This is really, it's just a larger scale because it's a football stadium instead of basketball, but it's really no different than when like Notre Dame women's basketball hosts first and second round NCAA tournament games. The NCAA comes in for those events. Like it's in Notre Dame's home arena or wherever the arena happens, but it's in Notre Dame's home arena.
Right.
But it's NCAA people who are running everything for those. Like there's certain, NCAA guidelines that have to be followed and all this different stuff. They make the, like the video board and all that stuff. Like they change the messaging there. So it's not like the typical what you would get before a Notre Dame home game. It's more NCAA propaganda basically, but there's still music, and all these different things. But again, like Notre Dame fans still get a crack at tickets and all that kind of stuff. So there's still going to be a Notre Dame fan base in there. And because it's on your home campus, you expect that there's going to be a more pro Notre Dame crowd in attendance. Like the other team might travel, but they're not going to travel to the same extent as the team that's, like the home team hosting that event basically. So like, yeah, what?
That would be...
Oh, no Notre Dame DJ? No, there would not be a Notre Dame DJ.
That would be advantage everybody.
Yes.
If there was no Notre Dame DJ, by the way.
That's right.
Hate that. It is so dumb.
Yes.
Anyway, but that's really hilarious, Joe.
So you would. So it's not going to be nearly as bad as you think. It's still going to be Notre Dame Stadium. You're still going to get to host.
And it'll be watered down a little bit.
There'll be a lot of things that are going to be very similar,
yeah.
but it just won't. You just essentially can't have the Notre Dame slant. And, like when these NCAA events take place on a home campus, the host schools essentially put in bids, to host these games, and they guarantee the NCAA X amount of money. And then, the other, there is other money that comes back to the school that gets to host as well. So it's not like you're getting nothing out of it.
And they're in charge of the stadium. Okay, cool. They can't control the player walk. They can't control tailgating. They can't control, the trumpets at midnight or all of the different traditions that surround Notre Dame games. They can't control that kind of stuff. So it's still going to be a home game atmosphere for Notre Dame. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Right. That's right. So Vince, I want to go to this weekend. We didn't get a chance to talk about Alabama, Vanderbilt. Obviously, Trevor and I touched on it a little bit yesterday. Which loss do you think is worse, Alabama falling to Vandy or Notre Dame falling to Northern Illinois?
I think it's Alabama falling to Vandy. I really do. I know it's a bad loss for Notre Dame, but look, let's be honest. They've had a few bad losses in the last couple of years when you throw in Marshall and Stanford and all of that. Alabama's the number one team in the country, if I'm not mistaken. And they got kind of manhandled by Vanderbilt, who's supposed to be, as Nick Saban said, the easiest place in the world in the SEC to play as an away team, right? So I think that loss is worse. I really do, with the prestige that is Alabama and with what they're supposed to be doing to other teams. I think that loss is worse.
Interesting. I still think I understand what you're saying. Like if I'm Alabama and I'm number one and I've run the SEC for as long as I've run the SEC and, all the dominance and all that, and it's been 40 years, since you lost to Vanderbilt. Like if I'm Alabama, I probably feel like it's worse because it's like, how embarrassing. We lost to Vanderbilt, the team that never beats anybody. We're supposed to be Alabama, the number one team in the nation. And I have already seen, like after that, you've already got those Bama fans, those Tide fans rolling right after Kalen DeBoer right now, like put him on the hot seat and just the whole thing. At least it's an SEC team, like, and it was on the road as well. You're still Notre Dame, MAC team, a team that turned around and lost the next, 2 games basically after beating Notre Dame, and you lost it on your home field. So, like, I think that, again, if you're Alabama and you're in your little fishbowl, it probably seems worse. But I think that big picture, macro, like from a resume standpoint, if we're comparing resumes and those kind of things, I think that Northern Illinois stings Notre Dame more than Vandy ultimately, because I think Vandy's going to be a better team and they're in the SEC. At least they're a Power 4 program. I think that the sting of Northern Illinois stings more to me.
I get it. I understand. I feel like, well, I'll let you have the last word on that one.
No, that's okay.
No, you're good. I was just going to kind of repeat a lot of what I already said. So
okay,
we're good. We're good.
I mean, because I get that perspective. Like I could see it that way as well. But
like Notre Dame was not the number one team in the country.
It's true.
Not even close, really. But your point still stands that at least it was a Power 4 team. So,
and Notre Dame was a top 10 team.
That is a very good point. That is a good point.
But in both cases, where maybe I don't want to say it's good for Notre Dame, but like in both cases, you're coming off big wins the week before, and then they came out and were both flat the next week.
Good point.
Like Alabama just never expects to be flat against Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt obviously turned the tide on them, so to speak.
Well, perspective-wise, everybody thinks Alabama is light years ahead of Notre Dame anyway, right? I don't know that people would say Vanderbilt is light years ahead of a MAC school. Just throwing that out there.
Wow. You're coming in hot with that one, Vince. You're saying Notre Dame is not light years ahead of a MAC school?
No, it's not what I said at all. I said Alabama, the public perception is that Alabama is light years ahead of Notre Dame. I'm not saying that Vanderbilt is light years ahead of a MAC school.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, Stephen, I did see the Alabama, but number 13 was out there throwing the tantrums and all that.
That was all over the news lately.
Yeah. So I've got the season over-under win totals for Notre Dame's opponent from the start of the season, coming into the season. And I thought we would kind of look at them.
Okay.
And see like how close they're going to. Texas A&M with an over-under of 8.5. They've got a 5-1 record right now. They play Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, New Mexico State, Auburn, Texas. Feeling pretty good about 4 more wins.
Yeah, I am feeling pretty good about it. Yeah.
And I think that every Notre Dame fan is basically the biggest Texas A&M fan
oh my gosh.
in the world right now, right?
I am for sure.
I know. Yeah, I'm still over on that. I think I'm still over on Texas A&M. Florida State, man, I hope you didn't bet the over on 9.5 Florida State. They are 1-5.
Oh.
There is obviously no way.
No, it's not even mathematically possible, right?
Like the question with them is, are they even going to be a 500 team?
I'm going to go with no on that too.
I know.
My goodness.
Louisville 8.5, and this is one of the this is interesting
one,
here
actually.
To me. They are 3-2 right now after losing to SMU last week. Their remaining games are against Virginia, Miami, Boston College, Clemson, Stanford, Pittsburgh, Kentucky. That's actually a pretty tough schedule that Louisville's got the rest of the way.
It is. And yeah, finishing up with Kentucky is obviously no piece of cake either. Pitt's undefeated, I believe. I think they can beat Stanford. I think that's a win. I think Boston College is probably a win. I feel like Virginia's a win. That's 3.
Well, Virginia's 4-1 though.
I know.
right now.
I still think Louisville's a better team. So that's 3. And right now they've got 3. So that's 6. There's 2. They need 2 more in there. It's going to be tough. You got Miami, Clemson, Pitt, and Kentucky. Ooh, I'm going to say under, but
I think
would
I
not
am
be
too.
surprised if it was over. How about that?
I'm not feeling. I'll be interested to see what Louisville does this week. Like again, like did they fall prey even though they lost to Notre Dame? Like did they kind of fall prey? With what happened to them last week against SM. When losing to SMU, they just did not look very good against SMU last week. And they've actually got Virginia, not this week. This is their bye week this week, but they've got Virginia coming up next week. So that's an interesting one. And we'll go ahead and do Virginia because they've got an over under of 4.5.
They're at 4 right now.
4 wins. I mean, they're going to get it, but they don't have a, necessarily.
They don't have a gimme.
Yeah. I mean, Louisville, Clemson, like North Carolina, I feel pretty confident in.
Sure.
Pittsburgh, what exactly are they? SMU, Virginia Tech, like they could just as easily lose every one of those games, but I think they've got at least 1 win in that stretch.
They got 4 ranked teams still on their schedule.
Yeah.
Whew.
And their only losses to Maryland, interestingly enough.
Yeah. Wow.
How about Northern Illinois? Their win total was 6.5. They're 3-2 right now. Like it's all MAC teams basically the rest of the way. I think they'll get it, but I think every MAC game is basically a toss-up to me.
It is. I haven't figured out who the dominant team in the MAC is right now because right now, well, it's still early. I think most teams have only played 1 or 2 games in the MAC right now. So it's obviously very early that they're actually going to start playing each other now. Like Eastern Michigan, I think it might be the best team in the MAC at the moment. But again, they haven't really played each other.
Yeah.
So, because Eastern Michigan, I think, is 4-1 overall right now, and their 1 loss is to Washington, which was out at Washington. So, yeah, I mean, I think they got a chance at 6. I think they'll get 7. I think they'll get there.
I think they will, but I think they're probably just going to get there, basically. Meanwhile, Dumpster Fire in West Lafayette, they're 1-4. Their over-under was 4.5 coming into the season. And listen to this that they've got to play. Illinois, Oregon, Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, Indiana. They might end up going 1-11 this year, Vince.
Yeah, they're not going to hit it. Purdue's not going to hit it.
No, there's no way.
Pretty good confidence in that.
No, 4. They need 4 actually to go over. There's no way they're getting to 5 wins.
No, not with that schedule. Not a chance.
Miami, Ohio. Like, even though they've got 3 losses to Power 4 teams, their over-under was 7.5. They're 1-4 right now. Their only win is against UMass.
Right.
They lost to Toledo as well. I don't think they're getting there.
This week is a big game. It's them, and they have to go to Eastern Michigan. This is a huge game for them. If they don't win this one, they're clearly not going to get it.
It just dawned on me. They've literally got to win out to go over. So there's no way that's happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chuck.
I mean, it sucks because they got kind of pilfered in, with graduation and the transfer portal because they were so good last year.
Yep. Stanford, their number was 3.5. They're 2-3. They've got Notre Dame, obviously, this week, SMU, Wake Forest, NC State, Louisville, Cal, and San Jose State.
I think
they get 2 wins.
I think they get it. Yeah. I think they get it.
And that might be it. I think they just get 4.
Yeah.
Basically. Georgia, Texas, 4.5.
Really?
All they need is 1 more win. They've
They'll
got Carolina, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Miami, NC State, Georgia.
They'll get it.
Yeah. Again, all they need is 1 more win. North Carolina seems like a pretty safe bet for all these ACC teams to be 1 more win.
So sad. But true.
Yep. And then, of course, the 2 service academies, 5.5 for Army and Navy. They're both sitting at 5. I mean, they're going to go over. And, of course, what makes this more it's just the fact that both of them are playing Notre Dame this year. But they don't have a lot of common opponents, even though they're in the same conference, at least the rest of the way anyway. East Carolina is their only common opponent the rest of the way. Navy's already played Air Force. Army still plays Air Force. So, like, are you thinking, like, do you think that for each of them, before they play each other at the end of the season, is Notre Dame their only loss, or do you think that they stumble someplace else before the end of the year?
You know, that's tough. But they've been playing so well up to this point. I mean, okay, let's look at Navy's schedule, right? They got Charlotte. I think that's a win. They got Notre Dame. I think that's a loss. They've got Rice, who's 1-4 right now. You can probably check that off as a win. USF is 2-3. That looks pretty good. Tulane is 4-2. That could be a little bit more difficult. East Carolina is 500. They're 3-3. And then you got Army. They could very well run the table except for Notre Dame. They could very well do it. As far as Army is concerned, they got UAB, which is 1-4. We already talked about East Carolina. They're 500. Air Force is 1-4. North Texas is 4-1. So obviously and it's at North Texas. So that's going to be difficult. UTSA is 2-3. So I think North Texas is the biggest game there outside of Notre Dame. They could do it as well. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Look, they're going to be in contention for that at-large spot. That's what I'll say. I think both of these teams are going to be in contention. So that means, like,
and that's what makes it interesting that they both play Notre Dame, and the fact that they could play each other, as we talked about last week. They could play each other in the conference championship game and then have to play each other again in the Army-Navy game.
Which is nuts, which is crazy.
So they could essentially, they might eliminate themselves from playoff contention because of that. Like, they could, if they split those games.
And in my opinion, if Notre Dame beats both of them, it really shouldn't be held against them. Like, that's how I feel. Like, if they both lose to Notre Dame, that should not be held against them.
For a playoff spot? I mean,
well, okay. Let's put it this way. If you start comparing resumes, right, compared to the other at-large teams, or not at-large teams, but the other group of 5 teams, you got to start comparing resumes. Like, if their one loss is to Notre Dame, should that really knock them off compared to some of these other teams? That's the question. I would have to have the resumes in front of me to make the argument, and we'll be able to do that later on in the season.
Good point, USMA. The playoffs will actually be announced the week before Army-Navy, which just adds another layer to this whole thing. Because, like, of course, nobody factored in the fact that Army and Navy could actually be in playoff contention when they scheduled Army-Navy.
Good point. They've never actually considered that. A lot of times, they already know where they're going bowling by the time they play each other. So,
exactly.
There is that.
Exactly. And then the last Notre Dame opponent is literally the last Notre Dame opponent, USC. They've got an over-under of 7.5. They're 3-2 right now. Here's their schedule the rest of the way. They obviously host Penn State this week. Then they go to Maryland. Then they host Rutgers. Then they go to Washington. Then they host Nebraska. They're at UCLA. They host Notre Dame to close out the season. Does USC get to 8 wins?
Man, I don't think they do. I think if they stumble, it's gonna be a bad stumble. You know what I mean? And I think it just kind of snowballs for them in a bad way.
I just don't see 5 wins.
Yeah.
In those, they got to win 5 of 7 to get there. I just don't see it. Like, Rutgers is not going to be easy. Even Nebraska is not going to be easy. Penn State this weekend. So, yeah, I'm going to go under. I'm under for USC as well. Yeah, I agree. Rutgers, Nebraska, both going to be tough outs for USC. Well, some crazy Notre Dame women's basketball news, Vince. KK Bransford announced that she's going to redshirt this season as she deals with the lingering leg injury. And now this is, I don't know if you remember, she actually missed the first couple games of last season because she was kind of dealing with this thing. So she's going to be out. And it's interesting because talked with Neil Ivey last week, did the injury, like, I don't think Neil was going to make the announcement during the podcast, but I said, like, what kind of piece to the puzzle is KK Bransford? And there was kind of a little bit of a look on her face, when I said KK, and I think that this is why, because like she knew something was coming, but again, she wasn't going to say it. So KK is going to redshirt this entire season and try to get healthy, and hopefully that it plays out that way. She does get healthy. I mean, she was two-time Ms. Ohio basketball and McDonald's All-American and all that kind of stuff coming out of high school. So I hope this doesn't start a trend, because Maddie Westbeld already had surgery on her foot a couple of weeks ago, so now we've got two veterans already with injuries coming into this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not great, but this is one of the deepest teams in women's college basketball, especially at the guard position, and so I feel like they'll be able to absorb but I mean, gosh, you love having her out there with her length and, everything that she brings to the table. It stinks that she's going to be out for all the entire season, but I don't disagree with her that it's the right path, because you're just fighting the same injury over and over again. You're just not going to be 100%. So, she has aspirations of playing after Notre Dame, I would imagine. And if that's the case, you want to get healthy and you want to show people what you can do at 100% health. So, in the moment, it stinks, but in the long run, it's the right move. It's not great.
Yeah, and just knock on wood, no more injuries.
Yeah,
the rest of the way. Hopefully, they stay healthy this year, because we're we're less than a month away. We've got like 3 weeks. The first exhibition game is going to be here, and then the season starts the first weekend or the first week of November. So again, hopefully, KK Bransford is healthy sooner than later, but she'll be out and with the team on the bench all season this year. Vince, have you watched much of the baseball playoffs through this first weekend? The look on your face says probably not.
I think you know the answer to that. I have watched 0 innings of playoff baseball.
It's funny because Brian and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and he was, he was talking about Vanderbilt, Alabama, and all these games on set. He's like, "What, did you watch?" And all this different stuff. And I'm like, "Well, my Royals are in the playoffs." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're a baseball fan." He's like, literally kind of like that. He's like, "That's why I'm glad that I gave up baseball a long time ago." It's like, well, it's like playoff baseball. It's a lot of fun. Joe, stop it. Baseball does not blow. Playoff baseball is big time baseball. Like this is like, there's been so much. I will say, like Joe said, great game for the Royals last night. I agree. Again, Vince, you have not watched any of this, obviously, and Bob Costas on the call, as iconic as Bob Costas is, he's the one calling these games for TBS in the playoffs, and it's a little bit of a snooze fest trying to listen to Bob Costas call these games. So, I don't know. Is Vince even still there? Did he check out? I don't know what is going on with Vince right now. Steven hates the new playoff. I love this format. I love this so much better than the one and done wild card format that they used to have. I love the best of 3 first round. That's what I said they should do a few years back. I like it the way they're doing it. And like the Mets and Phillies are actually playing right now. And those 2 games, other than the Royals, Yankees, the Mets and Phillies series was just electric in Philadelphia. Both games were great games, and they're playing right now. So as soon as this is over, I'm going out. I'm watching Mets, Phillies.
There you go.
Royals, Yankees have the day off, but they'll be playing again tomorrow. Let me ask you this. You probably haven't even seen this since you haven't seen a playoff game, but fill in the blank. MLB putting Strauss corporate logo decals on batting helmets during the playoffs is blank.
Awful. Hate it. I hate all of the additional corporate nonsense in all sports. And so that part right there, hate it. I don't like having, corporate logos on jerseys. I don't like any of that stuff. I absolutely, I started watching that, like the Wrexham documentary, you know, with Ryan Reynolds and blah, 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 right? And so you're kind of watching like the international soccer. I can't stand the fact that these uniforms that these guys are wearing, they don't even have the team name on them. Well, what?
I
Like,
know.
that makes no sense to me. It's just a business.
They've replaced team names with corporate logos.
Like it's like the beer league, you know, where you've got like the law firm on the front, or you know, or whatever. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. The front of your jersey should have the team name on it, obviously, but I don't like the patches and I don't like all the extra. Like, I get the NFL putting patches on like practice jerseys and stuff like that. I don't give a crap about practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But game stuff, just I don't like it.
And
I don't
especially
like all
they
the
put it on both sides of the batting helmet. And I had no idea what Strauss was. I Googled it. It's some kind of, you know, like clothing company or whatever. And I, you know, looked and it's like nothing on the website, you know, looks that great. Like, you know, and that's like, that's what they're dancing with, you know, taking in a little bit extra money, you know, and I guess, you know, that Strauss, that's what Strauss wanted, you know, people to search for him. And I think it looks pretty tacky, especially on both sides. It would be one thing if they even put it on just one side of the helmet. I still wouldn't like it that much, but I just like, isn't that what the backstop is for, where they put up all those ads and stuff, you know, like behind home plate when they superimpose all those things, like you need them on the batting helmets as well. Not a fan.
Completely agree.
Shannon asking if I heard Bob Costas with a double play call in the Yankees game sounded like
rough.
He was mad that someone ate his leftovers. He's just rusty, man. It's like watching as much like the team, like watching the Mets Phillies and the environment that was there in Philadelphia. And I'm sure that like the same thing is going on at Citi Field in New York tonight. Like the atmosphere in that stadium and just the way they've got it mic'd, like you can't tell me that Yankee Stadium, you know, like that there's not the same kind, maybe not the exact same kind of atmosphere, but like you can barely hear it. Like the way they've got the crowd mic'd and all that kind of stuff, like you can barely hear any of the excitement. And Bob Costas, you know, like almost sounds like he's announcing a funeral or something most of the time. There's very little excitement coming through the microphone, and you know, it's just like bring me a little something, you know, like sound like rough. You want to be there, Bob. You're supposed to be the voice of a generation when it comes to baseball.
Yeah. So I generally like Bob Costas. I mean, I like when he did the Olympics and, you know, all that kind of stuff, but that one particular cut that I heard of that double play was rough.
Joe says, come on, Sean. He sucked 25 years ago, too. Okay, so maybe 25 years ago, but 35 years ago, Joe, he was nailing it.
Yeah.
I'm saying he used to be a little more lively. He does like to wax his poetic. Like somebody on social media brought up, I think it was game one, like of all the players in the Yankees Royals, you know, like you've got Bobby Witt, you know, all these, you know, Garrett Cole was pitching for the Yankees, and, you know, like once all these different players, like the guy that Bob Costas kept talking about was literally the guy from 40 years ago. He kept talking about George Brett sitting there with his wife in the stands. Like, and even as a Royals fan, it just got annoying.
Reference. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So an interesting thing going on in Los Angeles, Padres reliever Jeremiah Estrada says he doesn't think the Padres should have to play game 5 of their division series against the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium if the series ultimately goes to 5 games. Of course, they played the first 2 games in LA. Now they're moving to San Diego for the next 2 games starting tonight. But Estrada says Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred shouldn't allow it. After Sunday's game, it had to be delayed 10 minutes because Dodgers fans were throwing bottles, beer cans, baseballs out on the field at Padres players. You buy or sell that?
Oh, that's tough, man, because I'm the dean of discipline, okay? I feel like there should be consequences for actions. And I don't know if moving an entire game, I don't know what consequence there could possibly be for that, but it's a pretty easy way to make a stand, you know, like, hey, you guys just forfeited your opportunity to host game 5. Like, I honestly don't have a problem with it. I could be on board with it, Sean. I could be on board with it.
I mean, I understand where he's coming from, you know, like as a as an athlete, why should you be subject to that? And I think it's, a complete disgrace that it came to that. Like, in the middle of a game, you've got stuff being thrown out there on the field. Like I remember it happened at Yankee Stadium. Like, speaking of Yankee Stadium, and in that 2004, the Red Sox comeback over the Yankees, there were, Yankees fans were throwing stuff because they were mad at, I think it was the A-Rod call where he knocked the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's hand and all that different stuff. But like where we are right now with security, I mean, there's there's footage of all that. Like, they should be able to fairly easily figure out, like, at least facial recognition, like at the very least ban those fans from ever being out there again, or you need to put something in place so that if it happens again during this series, there are serious, ramifications for it, say up front, like, Dodgers will forfeit this game if it happens again, like, put it out there up front, so I don't think you can take the game away from them, but the Dodgers and Major League Baseball need to do something to put their foot down and try to prevent it from happening again. Can they shut down the troublesome? That's a good question, John B. Can they shut down the troublesome sections? Yeah, just like, if it was the outfield, like, I don't know.
That would be tough though, because that would be a punishment because the Dodgers,
or you could just say, "Look, we're not selling alcohol. We're not selling alcohol."
Oh, there you go.
That would cut them to the
core. Or
core.
Hey, let's go back to COVID. They can play in front of a empty stadium. That would be awesome. Those games were awful.
Oh man,
you could hear everybody talking on the field. Like, it was awful, awful, awful. So I say that in jest, obviously. And look, they're not going to move the state. They're not going to move the game. I understand where he's coming from. I just think it would be funny if they did do that. I think that would be fantastic.
Vince, what is your relationship to the movie The Blair Witch Project?
My relationship is, I remember when it came out. I believe I was in high school. You're going to have to remind me of what year
I think it was 99. I think it was 99 it came out.
That was my senior year in high school. And I remember thinking, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Did you go see it?
No. I think I saw it after the fact. Like, this is dumb. Like, I remember what the cameras going all over it was stupid. Like, I hated it. It was dumb. I did not like it at all.
Interesting. I wasn't sure because teenage Vince, I was trying to picture would Vince have gone, and this was, there was obviously internet, but it was obviously pre-social media,
it's pre-internet in my house.
Pre-internet prominence. Yeah.
I did not have it until I got to college. So
right. Did you know people who saw it though and thought that it was real? Actually found footage and that kind of thing?
Yes. I was like, you guys are so stupid. I remember thinking I was still very cynical.
So Vince was still Vince even in high school. Okay.
100%. Okay. 100%. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about it, and I remember the radio station I worked at. I worked with a guy who was convinced that it was, that it actually happened, that they found, this video camcorder and this stuff actually happened, and those three actually died out there in the woods. And I'm like, dude, they were just on the VMAs last night. Or whatever award show.
You can't argue facts, okay?
That's right.
Jeez.
That's right.
Wow.
But that movie, apparently, they made it for $500,000. And what they even spent $500,000 on, I don't even know, because it was literally a lot of it was just ad lib. They told the actors, okay, here's the outline. You're going to use this camcorder. Here's the things that we want you to do. That, they literally had them sleeping in the woods in tents and stuff like that. And they, would try to scare them by shaking their tent and doing some of these crazy things. But they made it for $500,000 and it grossed over $250 million. Blair Witch Project. But
hats off.
No, exactly. But what sucks is the actors, they went on to virtually do not much else. And when they were promoting this, the production company and the studios wanted people to believe that it was real. Like they were selling the idea that, like this was a true story and they did find this camcorder. So like they didn't even want the actors auditioning for other roles or, that kind of thing, because they were trying to sell this idea. And as it turned out, like, the studio made buku dollars and the actors barely made anything. And
I believe
their careers didn't go on to very much afterwards. So
yeah,
I was hoping you were going to say you thought it was real when it happened. And like,
come on, man.
I had no idea. Well, like we didn't talk about this.
You know me better than that. So. You know me better than that, Sean. First of all, and look, I'm not a big fan of like, jump out and scare you, scary movies. Like this has never really been my thing. I like suspense type movies. I like thrillers, in that genre or whatever, like a whodunit. Like I do like that kind of. Never interested me. Never interested me.
Shannon down on the talented Mr. Ripley says the worst from your teenage years. Did you ever see that?
I don't think so. I don't
Matt
think I
Damon.
ever saw that one.
I'm trying to think of who else was in that. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh.
That other guy from that thing. I can't. I've seen it a couple times. I will say, I don't think it was one of the best. Beefeater, I wanted to get this in. He said he was at the bookstore the day before the Louisville game and saw Len Clark and Jared Basker got a signed copy of the book for their kids. He said after he saw Len on the show. Good guys. Yeah. Len Clark with his children's book. And he told me, Jude Law. Thank you, Father David and Jeff. Jude Law. That's the one I was seeing his face, but Jude Law was.
It was actually
actually
as I'm looking at this, there's a lot of famous people, and Kate Blanchett, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kate Blanchett. I forgot about that. All right. But yeah, Len Clark said that he had a few people come up to him and say that he saw him on the show. So, very appreciative. Len was very appreciative of that. So he was glad to talk to some IB listeners out there. And I believe he's going to be out there. I think he's got like book signings before all the Notre Dame home games. So happy to see him. Get out there and give him a shout once again. Tell him you saw him. So he'll be over at Augie's. Is it Augie's Locker Room?
Yeah. Yep.
I know they do that.
They got a lot of cool stuff there.
Yep. All right. Well, Vince is a Tuesday, Thursday guy this week. So he'll be back. You'll be back on Thursday. Tomorrow, it's a split show. Trevor's going to be here for at least part of the show for the mailbag. And then Jesse will be checking in after his
I saw that.
Sabbatical. He's been away for a couple of weeks as he began his new job. So Jesse's going to be in for rapid fire on tomorrow's show.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Looking forward to that. All right. We'll hit that like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Good stuff tonight. We'll talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.